Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, we're live in 2023. We are here, the 2023 NFL Football Pick Show. We are live and we are rolling. I'm so excited to be here. I cannot wait for this incredible season of NFL football to get started. We've already got a couple of people tuning in and watching live, and I'm exceptionally excited about getting everything started here. Obviously, we're going to wait a couple of minutes to see who straggles in here, because obviously we just went live. I posted about it. I'm more on top of it than I was at the beginning of the year last year. I feel like we got all our ducks in a row, and I'm very excited about that. Oh goodness, what a fun year it's going to be. Week one, there's always that excitement, that tingly excitement in week one when you do this, when you do what I do. There's always that excitement that you just can't wait to, like, it's I guess it's like it is in the actual NFL. It's there's the expectations are sky high. Everybody starts even money, and there's nowhere to go but up, but there's technically nowhere to go but down too. But we're not doing that this year. We're going straight to the moon this year, and it starts in week one. And I could not be more excited and more pumped for that to get going. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more once the actual episode starts, but we're doing things a little bit differently this year. The format's going to be a little bit different, and I think it's going to make things move along at a more brisk pace, which is one of the big goals that I have for this year, is not to necessarily stream for an hour and a half every single week, to have shorter episodes, more easily digestible episodes. That's what I want to accomplish in 2023. And I think I have a slightly different format now that is going to help me accomplish that. So I'm really looking forward to what that brings in 2023. Sip my nerd teas as is tradition. Oh, that's so good. All right. So what we're going to do, as always, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this so that I've got this handy dandy, even though I don't really need it for the first week. Half moon, why did Detroit move to +5.5? We'll talk about this in the episode, but that's because of the injury to Travis Kelce. I don't know whether you heard this or not. Kelce hyperextended his knee in practice today. So that very quickly adjusted that line and adjusted the total. Although it didn't adjust the total as aggressively as I thought it would. It opened at 54. And what is it right now? It is 53. So, I mean, it only went down a single point. I would have expected that it would have done more than that. But yeah, so that very quickly moved the line. The line's at 5 in a lot of places now. Like 5 is where I wound up getting it for the purposes of this episode. Yeah, it definitely makes a difference. I saw a stat, and I'll probably mention this in the episode too. I saw a stat that said that over a particular period of time, Travis Kelce's receiving touchdowns were like somewhere in the 60s, and every other Kansas City wide receiver combined was like 33. So like that just goes to show the massive difference between Travis Kelce and like everybody else that's ever been on that offense in terms of catching the football anyway. So yeah, that was what changed today was. And look, I mean, if he hyperextended his knee on Tuesday, even if it's like the lowest grade hyperextension you can have, he ain't turning around and playing on Thursday. And there's no point for him to do that because it's week one. So, you know. All right. Let's go for it, ladies and gentlemen. So we are going to go ahead and start the audio recording of the audio portion. Move our thing over here a little more. All right. Excellent. All right. In 5, 4, 3. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster underscore guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees. And ladies and gentlemen, we're back again. The 2023 NFL football season is upon us, a short 48 hours away from kickoff of Thursday night football. Kansas City and Detroit kicking us off for the 2023 NFL season. I am back with you for season number 12 of my weekly NFL football pick show. I am exceptionally excited to be here. Like, look, I've been doing this for a long time now. It's the longest job, it's the longest relationship I've ever had, is my relationship with you folks. And I am really excited to continue that through 2023, doing this show live for the second straight season. And one thing that I really want to accomplish with the 2023 show and the 2023 episodes is I want to make these more digestible. I want to make the show shorter. I want to make the show more accessible to a wider audience who maybe don't want to sit down for an hour and a half every week for this. Maybe they want to sit down for 45 minutes, sit down for an hour, something like that. So that's my goal. My goal is to accomplish that throughout this season, and to do so I have changed the format of this show slightly. Rather than having the platinum, gold, silver, and bronze picks every week, I have replaced that with really looking deeper into the marquee games every week. So obviously we're going to be focusing on Thursday night football. That will basically kick off the picks every single week, as it has in the past. We're starting with Thursday night football, but we're going to look at those marquee matchups, Sunday night football and Monday night football. Those are the games that we're really going to focus in on and give at least like kind of longer previews and longer predictions basically for those games in particular. Also different for this year, look, is no surprise to anybody, I'm a fan of the Green Bay Packers. Go Pack Go. So I might as well lean into that. I feel like I'm one of the only NFL prognosticators that doesn't actually lean into their own team affiliation, because I always felt weird about it. I always felt like, I want everybody to feel like I'm impartial. But you know what? I've got I've got an 11-year track record that even with my own team, I think I'm pretty darn impartial. So who am I trying to convince? Am I trying to convince myself? Am I trying to convince everybody else? So the fourth marquee game that we're going to look at every single week is the Packers game. So fans of the NFC North, you're going to enjoy that, because that means 6 times a year, I'm going to be hyper focusing in on a matchup featuring your team. But I think across those 3 marquee games every week, as well as the Packers game every week, I think we're going to have a nice dissection of being able to talk at length about basically every team in the league. I haven't sat down and done the actual math on it yet, but that's what I'm looking at for this season. I'm looking at focusing on those, again, those marquee, those most important games, as well as the Packers game. Let's lean into my team affiliation here a little bit. Every other game in every other week, basically what I'm going to be doing is much quicker picks, just almost like kind of gut instinct, just not spending that 4 and 5 minutes on every single game, because that's what pushes the show to an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and a half. And again, I want to make the show more digestible, more appealing to hopefully a wider audience in 2023. That's the way we're going to do things. Obviously, the pick'ems are back. Fantasy Corner is going to be back for this year. There's not going to be a ton of change other than that, other than the games that we're really spending the extra amount of time focusing on in 2023. Speaking of the Pick'em, yes, the Pick'em is back for 2023. And for those of you who are watching me live on my stream right now, you'll notice in the chat, I have a pinned message. And what that message is it's a direct link to signing up for Yahoo Fantasy Football Pick'em for 2023. And it is also the ID and password to join the Bridgewater's Finest Pick'em pool for season 12 of this show for 2023. Those details are right there. If you're not watching on the live stream, the details are down below, either on the replay or down below if you're listening to the audio version of this show. The details are right there for you if you want to join the Pick'em pool. But let me give them to you here verbally just this one time. What you want to do is you want to go to football.fantasysports.yahoo.com/pick'em/register/join group. That is going to take you right to the page where you put in an ID and a password in order to join the Bridgewater's Finest Pick'em pool for 2023. Again, football.fantasysports.yahoo.com/pick'em/register/join group. And once you're there, you want to put in our ID, which is 25330. Once again, that is 25330. And you want to input the password 123456789. Very simple password 123456789. That is going to allow you to join the Pick'em pool for season 12 of this show, putting your picks head to head against mine with confidence points as we have for years now. Doing the pool is one of my favorite parts of the season. I absolutely enjoy deep diving on the pool every week. Who won? What does the leadership race look like? How did I do with the picks and with confidence points? I love everything about it. So that's a big part of the show. All the details there are in that pinned message or down below. What we're going to do now is take a peek into Fantasy Corner, as I always do. And Fantasy Corner, once again, is brought to you by my great friends at the Dynasty Trade Calculator. So what you're going to want to do in the description down below, you're going to find my affiliate link to the Dynasty Trade Calculator. And for as little as a cup of coffee, you can get access to one of the absolute best Dynasty keeper and long-term fantasy football tools that is available to you on the internet. You can find trade evaluations, player rankings, podcasts, a ton of great experts available to you on the Dynasty Trade Calculator. You want to go to my affiliate link. Again, for as little as a cup of coffee, you can get access to one of these incredible tools at the Dynasty Trade Calculator. It has helped me win Dynasty championships. It can do the same for you. The Dynasty Trade Calculator is where you need to go. So, in Fantasy Corner, what's Fantasy Corner going to look like for us this year? I am 10 teams deep. 10 teams deep in fantasy football this season. I've got 6 teams in redraft. I've got 2 dynasty teams, and I've got 2 best ball teams. So we're going to be looking basically at how I do across the board in those matchups every single week. Best ball, obviously, not a whole lot you can do about that. Redraft, obviously, there's trades. There's all kinds of fun stuff that can happen in there. And then dynasty, which I've really dove into over the past 5 to 6 years. I love dynasty fantasy football. It is fantastic. So look, 10 teams this year. And with the redraft teams, I've really kind of been taking a liking to particular strategies. And I wanted to take one team with a particular strategy. And then at the end of the year, see how those teams did and kind of figure out if I'm going to adopt a particular strategy on a permanent basis moving forward. So we're talking zero RB. We're talking robust RB. We're talking basically Bridgewater's finest mans. So basically, I'm just drafting players that I really, really like, regardless of position. All kinds of fun stuff that I'm doing with redraft this year, sticking specifically in some cases to Yahoo's ADP. Whoever the first ADP is, don't think about it, just take them. Stuff like that. So I'm trying a variety of different draft strategies to see how they end up at the end of the year. And I look forward to kind of deep diving on that stuff as well. That's what Fantasy Corner is going to look like this year. And once again, brought to you by the great folks at the Dynasty Trade Calculator. And I'll take this opportunity, as always, to look at my two dynasty matchups for week one in both the professionals dynasty fantasy football as well as the Ante and Co dynasty fantasy football leagues. So in week one, I've got a matchup with longtime member of this community, somebody I consider a close personal friend. That is my boy Hatbox, Chris Carter. That's my matchup in week one in the professionals dynasty fantasy football. And that's a projected loss for me right now. Look, he's got an exceptionally good team. My team, I would consider to be one on the rebuild. So it's a projected loss for me right now. I do have to do a little bit with my individual defensive players. And my quarterback situation is going to be real dicey again, I think, for this season. But look, anything can happen in dynasty football. Trades happen all the time. Who knows what might happen? I am the proud new owner of Bijan Robinson in that league, the new manager of Bijan Robinson in the professionals dynasty fantasy football, because I did have the first overall pick this year. In the Ante and Co pool, I got a matchup in week one against Carmine. He claims he can run a 4.40. All I can tell is he knows how to draft rookie quarterbacks and no individual defensive players. So look, we love busting on Carmine. So Carmine is my week one matchup in Ante and Co, and that is a projected win for me. Right now, it's a projected big win, but I do know he doesn't have his best roster in his lineup right now. I feel good about that matchup. I think I'll be able to start the season off on the right foot at 1-0. Those are my dynasty matchups, and that's Fantasy Corner for week one. So before we move on, I do want to take a little bit of time to take a peek here at the live chat. Half Moon, again, longtime member of this community, somebody else that I consider a friend, also a member of the Professionals Dynasty Fantasy Football League. He asked before we went live with the episode portion, why the Detroit Lions moved to plus 5.5 against the spread. And that's, of course, related to the news that we got earlier today that Travis Kelce hyperextended his knee in practice today. So that obviously is a huge, huge hit to the Chiefs offensively if he's not able to go. And look, it's week one of a new season. You've got your 33-year-old elite starting tight end who hyperextends his knee before the first game of the season, which takes place on Thursday. You've only got 2 days turnaround. Don't mess with it. Like, you have to assume he's not going to be playing in this game. And if he's not, between him and Chris Jones not being in the lineup for Kansas City, it shifted that number pretty significantly. The total came down a point down to 53. But I mean, against the spread, it was 6.5, 7 when it started. It's all the way down to now 5.5. I got it at +5. So, I mean, that number has moved a lot in the wake of that news with Travis Kelce. Jonathan Manson is in the chat talking about CFL. I do love CFL, and I do love it represented wherever it possibly can be. Jonathan talking about how all the home teams seem to be the best picks for next week in the CFL. Let's see. Half Moon tried that before on week one, got like 60%. I'm assuming that's picking NFL picks. And Vaping is in the chat. Vaping 101. What's up, man? I'm having fun. I'm back here doing this once again. I'm very happy to see you, my friend. I appreciate you popping in for the week one episode. And Jonathan chiming in with Ottawa being due for a win. It has been a while. Yeah, the Red Blacks have really been struggling lately. All right. Now, I will take this opportunity, as I always do, to remind you that if you go to the description of this live stream, the description of the replay, the description of the audio version, wherever you interact with this show, you can find, you won't find my results from last week because it is week one. You'll find all of my straight up against the spread and over under plays for week one of the 2023 NFL season. You're going to find information on joining the Bridgewater's Finest Pick'em Pool for season 12 of this show. You're going to find information on joining the NFL YouTube Prognosticators Facebook page and information on my great friends and sponsors, the great folks at Nerd Teas and Coffee Beans. Folks, if you don't know it by now, you should, but I'm going to remind you one more time. Nerdteas.ca is where you need to go for dozens and dozens of incredible loose leaf tea, estate coffee, and flavored coffee blends, the best that you can find anywhere is at nerdtease.ca. I'm very confident in saying that. And when you go to nerdtease.ca, you're going to want to use my promo code, which is BWFinest. That's going to save you 15% at checkout. You're going to get free shipping on any order over $100 gets you your free shipping. You're going to get a great conversion rate on the US dollar. And I'm seeing Blind Canadian Cat in the chat now complaining that he thought the stream started later. My apologies, my bad, but it was supposed to start at 7 p.m. Eastern. Sorry about that, Cat. Right, Nerd Tease. You interrupted my Nerd Tease plug. What are we doing here? God, it's week one. I'm a little rusty. Nerdtease.ca, promo code BWFinest. Save your 15%. Get your free shipping. Find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdtease.ca. Use the promo code BWFinest. Once again, great conversion rate on the US dollar for my American viewers. Kat chiming in saying, T is for the elderly. I am, in fact, an old man. Vaping 101 chimes in with, I thought it was going to start at 9 p.m. Eastern also. I'm pretty sure I scheduled it for 7 p.m. Eastern. That's, All right, I'll have to look into that. Sorry about that. I certainly was intending 7 p.m. Eastern, but if I messed up the scheduling, I will have that fixed for next week. My apologies. So now it is time. Now we dive into the somewhat new format for the picks for the NFL in week one. But before we get to the picks, let's just kind of take a little stroll down memory lane, see how we ended last season in terms of how these teams performed in the 2022 season leading into 2023. Obviously, we had an offseason. We had a lot of change around the league, as we do every year. I mean, my God, the New York Jets completely facelifted their entire offense. And look, let's take a look at how we ended last season, where these teams stood, where I personally power rank these teams heading into the 2023 season, and then we're going to get into those picks. So one thing that I have really been diving into lately in terms of a metric for judging teams, and anyone that's been watching the CFL show knows what I'm going to talk about. I'm talking about efficiency, not necessarily looking at teams as the, okay, what's the bulk number? What's the bulk number of yards, bulk number of points? Yes, of course, those are important. But what I've been looking at in terms of a metric for really identifying if we try to put every team on an even playing field, what teams are the most efficient and the least efficient scoring points and giving up points. Basically, how easy is it for them to put points on the board, and how difficult do they make it for the opposition to put points on the board based on the yardage that they accrue and the yardage that they give up. So it's an efficiency metric. It's relatively easy to understand once you really kind of get into the brass tacks of it. Let me give you a number just to start. And this is the league average. In 2022, all 32 NFL teams averaged 15.7 yards. 15.7 yards per point scored or point allowed. So just keep that number in mind, 15.7. So on average, an average NFL team scored a point every 15.7 yards and allowed a point every 15.7 yards. When we talk about efficiency, that's what we're talking about. It's kind of a way of trying to put teams on a more even playing field in terms of how we measure them. So, in terms of both offense and defense, here's what we were looking at in terms of the most efficient and least efficient offenses and defenses from the 2022 season. On offense, the top 5 most efficient offenses in the NFL in 2023. No particular order on this, just follow along. The Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, Cincinnati and Buffalo, very, very close in terms of this metric. We are also looking at the San Francisco 49ers, one of the most efficient offenses from last season. We're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles And the number one most efficient offense in the NFL from last year, not Buffalo, not Kansas City. I talked about this on Twitter a little bit. The Dallas Cowboys. It only took the Dallas Cowboys 12.9 yards on average in 2022 to score a point. It's about 3 yards less than the league average. That's how much better, how much more efficient the Dallas Cowboys were at scoring points. Again, more efficient than Kansas City, more efficient than Buffalo, more efficient than teams that were scoring more points than them, but it took them less. It was easier for them to come by their points than it was for any other team in the NFL. Rounding out the top 10 from last year, the Patriots, surprisingly, only 14.7. So they were among the more efficient offenses from last year. That was interesting when I did the math. The Kansas City Chiefs, obviously, they're inside the top 10. It's a great offense. It's also an efficient offense. The Seattle Seahawks was another surprising one there who rank inside the top 10 in terms of efficiency on offense from last year. And then two NFC North teams, the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings, both ranking inside the top 10 in terms of offensive efficiency from last year. Let's look at the other side of that coin. The least efficient offenses in the NFL from 2023. We are looking at the New York Jets. You know, you wonder why they completely facelifted their entire offense. That's a good reason why. I think the second least efficient offense from last year, they're certainly, or second or third, they're right around that metric. So they're firmly inside the bottom five. The Pittsburgh Steelers were in that conversation as well. The Indianapolis Colts, we're going to skip that team. The Tampa Bay Bucks were in the bottom five in this metric as well. And the least efficient offense in the NFL last season, Russell Wilson, Broncos country, let's ride. The Denver Broncos. It took Denver over 19 yards per point scored last season. I realize this is a lot of math, but over 19 yards. Again, league average 15.7. Took them over 19 yards to score a point on average. That's how inefficient they were on the offensive side of the football. So we know that their offense wasn't great just with the bulk numbers, but even in terms of efficiency on a yard per yard basis, the worst in the NFL. Rounding out the bottom 10 here, the Cleveland Browns, the Houston Texans, the Tennessee Titans. We'll try to see what their offense is going to look like this year. The New Orleans Saints were in this conversation, as well as the Washington Commanders. So that rounds out our bottom 10 in terms of offensive efficiency. Let's take a look at the defenses now. Same metric, but in this case, when you're actually coming up with a number, whereas on the offensive side, you want the number to be lower. You want your offense to have to put up the lowest number of yards in order to score a point. On defense, it's the other way around. You want your defense to force the other offense to have to put up the most yards before you give up a point on the board. So on defense, looking for big number. On offense, looking for small number. The top 5 most efficient defenses from last season, 2022. There's a little bit of a tie here. Once again, no particular order until I tell you number 1. We're looking at the New York Jets. Interestingly enough, they are in the top 5. The Buffalo Bills, probably no surprise there. The Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals, all within that range of the top 5. The Jacksonville Jaguars, interestingly enough, one of the most efficient defenses in the NFL last year. The Tennessee Titans are there as well. Again, there's like a 3-way tie here for 5th place at exactly, it's like 16.7 or something like that. So it was like 3 teams like tied with almost exactly the same number. And we are looking at the number 1 most efficient defenses. The number 1 most efficient defense in the NFL from last year by a lot. The San Francisco 49ers. Very interesting, obviously, with the Bosa contract situation that's still in the process of playing itself out. But the Niners, coming into the season at the tail end of last year, the most efficient defense in the NFL. The other teams that round out the top 10 in this conversation, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're inside the top 10. We are also looking at the Dallas Cowboys are in the top 10 and the Giants are in the top 10 as well. Other side of that coin, least efficient offense. Kat, I'm going to answer that question just when I get through this list. The least efficient defenses in the NFL from the 2022 season. Bottom five, you're looking at the Miami Dolphins. Really did not make it difficult on teams last year to score points on them. The Cleveland Browns, same deal. They're in the bottom five. The Indianapolis Colts, they are in the bottom five in this metric. The Chicago Bears, a team you would talk about as being kind of predicated on defense, the Bears, bottom five in this metric. And the number one least efficient defense in the NFL from 2022, the Arizona Cardinals. It only took opposing teams 13.2 yards on average to score a point. Again, league average 15.7 for the Cardinals. It only took their opposition 13.2. In this conversation, you want big number, not little number. The rest of the bottom 10 in this construct, it looks like this. The Kansas City Chiefs were in that bottom 10. Their defense not as bad as it's been in years past, but still bottom 10 from an efficiency perspective. The Las Vegas Raiders, that did not surprise me in the least. The LA Rams were in this conversation as well. And two more NFC East teams, the Washington Commanders, and interestingly enough, the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, most people look at that defense as being really good. They finished last season bottom 10 in terms of efficiency on defense. And again, not bulk numbers, but efficiency on defense. How difficult was it for teams to score points on them in based on yardage? So that I'm trying to answer Kat's question with this. So Kat asked, what is this calculating again? Like longest and shortest touchdown lengths, or what exactly? I feel a little lost. So this efficiency metric, one more time, is measuring in terms of like the average yardage that a team gets on offense or allows on defense, divided by the average number of points they score on offense, the average number of points they give up on defense. You're looking at efficiency. So how easy was it in terms of yardage gained? Is it to score a point? And on defense, how difficult is it for your opposing team to, how many more yards do they need to accrue to score a point? So on offense, you want smaller number. On defense, you want larger number. You want it to be really easy for you on offense to score points based on the yardage that you gain. And on defense, you want to make it as difficult as possible for the opposition to score points based on the yardage they have to get in order to score a point. I hope that kind of cleared it up a little bit, but it's a metric that I've been using in the CFL this year. I've kind of adopted in the last 5 or 6 weeks, especially, and I find it really useful because you can look at like, oh, this is, and I've done this in the past. Like this team's the number one total defense in the NFL, and it's like, okay, we can tell what that means, but what's the correlation between that and the number of points they give up? You know what I mean? And yes, of course, just the number on the scoreboard is what matters. But how you get to that number, I think, is equally as important, if not more. It puts all the teams on at least a similar playing field. So that's why I find it to be a useful metric. Let's see. Gorian is in the chat saying Colts are going to win less than 4 games this year. That might be less than 4 games. That's going to be a toughie. Less than 4 puts them very firmly in the conversation for the first overall pick. Like whether you're talking about that potentially being a quarterback. I mean, if it's the Colts, it's not going to be because they just took Richardson. Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver, maybe. That's interesting, but less than 4 games. That's a tough one. I didn't really dive too much into making those kinds of preseason predictions because I find I do them, and by week 2 they're blown up. So I'm like, I feel like this is going to be a total waste of my time, total waste of time for me anyway. Bruin Steel saying, "What's up? I just signed up. Awesome, thank you so much for that. Can't wait to say Daryl Washington and Joey Porter Jr." in action. Excellent. Gotta love that. A lot of people say Jalen Warren should be the RB1 instead of Najee Harris. I heard that conversation in the offseason, Bruin, but I mean, I think Jalen Warren has a part in that offense. No question about it. I think he definitely does. But to be the RB1, like the league as a whole has shifted towards backfield by committee. Like there just aren't as many bell cow running backs anymore as there were even, God, 2 years ago. Like the concept of the bell cow running back feels like it's dying. So I think he has a part in that offense. I just don't think he's the top guy. Gorian saying the Colts messed up with Anthony Richardson. I hope not. I took him in one of my dynasty leagues, so hopefully they didn't. So I gave you a bunch of numbers there. What do these numbers mean? How does it change how I look at these teams heading into the 2023 season, where, as Half Moon just pointed out, stats are set to 0. So many players have moved around. There's a bunch of teams with new head coaches, new offensive coordinators. All of this is different. How do I look at the teams heading into the 2023 season? I'm so glad you asked. So, what we're going to do, rather than like a traditional 1 to 32 power ranking, which is what a lot of people do, and all respect to them for doing it, I find it better and more useful to rank teams in tiers. So you got like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Like what's the real difference on a 32 item list? What's the real difference between 14 and 16? Like pretty, like not a lot. It's not going to be a lot. So why sit there and be like, is this team the 14th best? Is they the 15th best? Are they 15th best? Maybe they're 16th best. Like that feels to me like a total waste of time. Tiers, grouping teams together who I feel are at least mostly similar and who are this year, the way I did it was sort of striving towards a particular goal. So instead of a 1 to 32 power ranking, I did power tiers. Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4, and put all 32 teams into those tiers. These are what the tiers are. My top tier, my number 1, the teams that I believe are truly elite. Truly elite teams in the NFL is tier 1. Tier 2, teams that I believe are legitimate playoff contenders. And if the teams in the top 2 tiers wound up being the 14 playoff teams, wouldn't surprise me in the least. Okay? The third tier, teams on the fringe. Teams that I think in one way or another are capable of making a run, maybe even slipping into one of those wild card spots. Teams that are on the fringe, that are right there, feel like maybe they might be missing a piece or two, but feel like they're right there and could do some damage. And then the fourth tier, the bottom tier, that I kind of affectionately call the rebuilders. Teams that are I don't feel are contenders. Other people might feel like are contenders, but I don't. The teams that are the ones that'll be in the conversation for those top 10 draft picks. That's basically the way I'm looking at the league heading into week 1. Truly elite, playoff contenders, on the fringe, and on the rebuild. Here's how I rank them. And after this, we're going into our picks for week 1. I believe there are 6 teams up here in this top tier, this truly elite top tier. Those teams are the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, the San Francisco 49ers, with the belief that the Bosa situation is going to get rectified sooner rather than later. The Kansas City Chiefs, with the belief that the Travis Kelce injury is not a long-term thing. He might miss a couple of games. I don't think it's long-term. The Philadelphia Eagles, I think you got to put them there. And I'm going to put the Dallas Cowboys in there as well. Like I mentioned earlier, most efficient offense in the NFL coming out of the 2022 season. While it is true that I think they have a new offensive coordinator this year, and there's been a little bit of turnover there. Zeke is obviously not there anymore. It's the Tony Pollard show. But you can make the argument that Tony Pollard is the more efficient and better running back at this stage in his career. I think the Dallas Cowboys deserve to be in that top tier. And that's, if you give me pushback on that, I get it, because they were like the last team that I added into that tier, but I think they belong there. Next up, the playoff contenders, the teams that I genuinely believe have a great shot at being playoff teams this year. I'm going to put the New York Jets in that category. They overhauled the whole offense. They brought in Aaron Rodgers. We talked about it. They were one of the least efficient offenses in football last year. It's going to take some time to gel and come together. But when you brought in Aaron Rodgers, you didn't just bring him in. You brought in Randall Cobb. You brought in Alan Lazard. You brought in weapons that he's familiar with. So I don't think the gel is going to take as long as, say, it's taken in Denver with Russell Wilson coming over. So I'm putting the Jets in that playoff contention category. The Baltimore Ravens, definitely putting them there. I'm going to put the New York Giants in this category as well. I think Daniel Jones takes a big step forward this year. Bringing in a guy like Darren Waller on offense is big. I think that defense is good, verging on very good. I think they definitely have a shot at improving this year. I like what they did in the draft. I'm going to put the Giants there. Half Moon's picks, Detroit Lions. Motor City Dan Campbell has got that team cooking, at least in terms of how they performed last year. I'm going to put the Detroit Lions right there. They're going to be fighting for that division title. I don't see any reason why they're not. That makes them a playoff contender. Boom. I'm putting them there. I'm going to put the Seattle Seahawks there as well. I think this Seahawks team has a chance of taking a big step forward on defense. They brought in a big offensive weapon in JSN. I think if Geno Smith performs how he performed last year, I think they deserve to be there. So I'm going to put the Seahawks in that playoff contender category. They're going to be joined by the Miami Dolphins. I think the Dolphins deserve to be there. Probably one of the best, if not the best, 1-2 punches at wide receiver in the NFL this year. The Jacksonville Jaguars, I think, deserve to be there as well. Trevor Lawrence, I think, takes another step forward with this offense. He might even be a dark horse for like MVP. Like, can we start the Trevor Lawrence could potentially be an MVP conversation if he takes that extra step forward from what he did last year? I think the Jags deserve to be there. And I think I'm going to put the LA Chargers in this category as well. They are the bane of my existence. You know this if you've been watching my show for a long time. You know this, you understand this. But with that quarterback and with the offensive pieces they have, bringing in a guy like Quentin Johnston in the draft, I think the Chargers deserve to be in that playoff conversation. That makes their week 1 matchup against Miami really interesting because both of those teams are in the same tier. Now we're going to look at teams on the fringe. Like I said, these are teams that could make a run, could potentially be there. If they snuck into a playoff spot, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm going to put the Pittsburgh Steelers in this tier. I'm going to put the New England Patriots in this tier as well. I don't think they're a great football team anymore, but I think they've got the pieces where they could make a little run there in the AFC East, maybe sneak into that 7th playoff spot. I'm going to put the Cleveland Browns in this conversation as well. You got a quarterback that's got as much talent as we know Deshaun Watson has. Don't think he necessarily showed it last year, but I think they belong in that conversation. I'm going to put the Tennessee Titans in there as well. I wish my personal Titans correspondent, Keith Bailey, was in the chat. He may have something to say about that, but we're going to put Tennessee there. The Washington Commanders, I think Sam Howell takes a big step forward on the offensive side. They've got great pieces on defense, especially on that D-line. And if they hum this year, that Washington defense could really be something to contend with. They could sneak into a playoff spot. Got the Atlanta Falcons in this tier as well. You bring in a guy like Bijan Robinson, it fundamentally changes your offense. Drake London, I think, is one of the better wide receivers in the league. And if Desmond Ridder can keep the quality of his game up, I think the Falcons could sneak into the playoffs. I'm going to say the same thing for the Carolina Panthers. Yes, it's a young, developing team. I almost put them in the rebuilder category because, if you look at the roster, that's probably where they belong. But you bring in a guy like Miles Sanders, you're not bringing him in to rebuild. So I'm going to put them in this tier because stranger things have happened and that division feels wide open. I'm going to put the Minnesota Vikings in this tier as well. I don't believe in their defense. I do not believe in the Vikings' abilities on defense. I think they got a little bit better in the offseason. I don't think it's going to make a ton of difference in terms of the actual results on the board. And I'm going to be a homer. I'm not putting the Green Bay Packers in a rebuilder because they were in the conversation for that Jonathan Taylor trade, despite the fact that they have Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. So they're trying to bring studs in. I think they're going to be in the conversation for Mike Evans, that those aren't the actions of a rebuilding team. So I'm going to put them in that on the fringe tier. The NFC North is not fully spoken for. Like, there's some teams still going to have to go out and win it. And if the Packers stole it at 10-7 or maybe 11-6, would I be shocked? Probably not. Then we're looking at the rest, which is the rebuilding teams. The Houston Texans, they're still there. They had a great draft, but they're still there. The Indianapolis Colts, Lord knows what's happening with Jonathan Taylor. The Denver Broncos, I think, are still there, even though I think that offense takes a bit more of a step forward this year. The Vegas Raiders, Devontae Adams, who knows how much longer he's in town for. So you've already lost Darren Waller. There's not too many more weapons on that offensive side to lose. Chicago Bears, even though Justin Fields, I think, is a great quarterback, and bringing in a guy like DJ Moore, I think, changes that offense. But I think they still belong in this tier. The New Orleans Saints, that's going to be a contentious pick because I'm not a believer in the Saints. I like Derek Carr. I like Chris Olave a lot. Alvin Kamara is still suspended for the first 3 weeks. So what's the run game going to look like for those first 3 weeks? What's the defense going to look like this year? I don't know. There's something about them. I'm currently not a believer in the Saints, and that's why they're here. The Tampa Bay Bucks, for obvious reasons. This is, they're in a little bit of salary cap hell here. They're going to Baker Mayfield now at quarterback. Mike Evans wants out. I like Rachaad White, but, not a huge believer in them this year. The Arizona Cardinals, obviously. And the LA Rams. They're now facing the salary cap repercussions of F them picks. Let's go win a Super Bowl. And good for them. They got their Super Bowl, but they're dealing with it now. I think they're firmly in the conversation for the first overall pick. So that's how I rank the teams heading into the 2023 season. Now I have to pause for water. All right, folks. Before we get into our picks, let's just go through the chat here very quickly. Let's see. What did I miss? Oh, dang. Tyler's in the chat, or was in the chat, at least for a time. Time for a perfect season. If you believe, I believe. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to Tyler. He is my my longtime friend from back in elementary school or before. And the 1A to my 1B of the Justin and Tyler Movie Awards. Say hello to Tyler there. Chris was in the chat live. What did I miss? Kat says just the usual advertisements. I can't even be mad at you. You're not even lying. It's not even untrue. Let's see. What did I miss? Kat says, I've tried doing power rankings once many years ago, never again. More complicated. My bias comes into play. Yeah, it's tough. Like, when you're ranking individually, it's super tough to not let your bias kind of crawl in there. Gorian says Giants money line, Jets money line, singles, Saints Eagles money line. That's probably a parlay. Gorian also chiming in saying Bills are overrated. Andrew Warren, hey man, sorry to break it to you. I will not be joining your pick'em and fantasy leagues this year. Focus more on school. Hey, school is the priority, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to pop in. You've been a supporter of my channel for a long time. I really appreciate it, man. No worries at all. Kat chiming in saying Herbert deserves better. Gorian, Falcons are the class of the NFC South. They may potentially be. Half Moon, Lions will sweep the Packers 2 years in a row. That's a possibility for sure. And Bruin Steel, what do you think the Steelers do to improve? You never explained. What do I think the Steelers are going to do to improve? I think there's certainly going to be a step forward for Kenny Pickett. That there has to be. They're not going to improve if Kenny Pickett doesn't. So I'm assuming we're going to see that step forward with him. He's got really good receiving options in there now. One of the better 1-2-3s at receiver in the AFC. So there's all kinds of weapons around them. And if they can push their efficiency better, because again, one of their big problems last year was their efficiency on offense, where they were bottom 5, right? It took them almost 18 yards per point scored. So league average was 15.7. You got to get closer. If they get league average efficiency on offense, that offense is going to take a big step forward this year. I think that starts at the quarterback position. We see another step forward for Kenny Pickett, I believe, this year. And again, I think Pittsburgh could be one of those dark horse playoff teams in the AFC. Andrew saying, I will be doing pick videos and the Cardinals are going to be the Exorcist. The Cardinals are going to be the Exorcist this year. They're going to be puking and their heads are going to be spinning. I'm not sure what you mean, Andrew. You're going to have to clarify that one for me, bud. And Kat says, I have a bold prediction for you. Patriots will finish as a bottom 5 team in the NFL. Could very well be. The Patriots are interesting. I think how you feel about the Patriots directly relates to how you feel about Mac Jones. I really do. If you feel like Mac Jones has the potential to be the guy, then I think you feel more comfortable about them. If you don't believe in that, then you're going to have an opinion like that they are going to be right there, like in the bottom 5, and that truly is the end of the era because Belichick's getting ready to take off and what have you. Okay. All right. Let's do this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dig into our week 1 picks with the slightly new format that I mentioned off the top of the episode. But for those of you who might have missed it earlier in the live stream, I'm slightly changing my format this year with the intention of making the picks portion of the show move faster. I want to make it more engaging, more digestible for people. So rather than the platinum, gold, silver, and bronze, which we're not going to have this year, I'm going to be placing my focus on the marquee games, the primetime games. Thursday night football, Sunday night football, Monday night football. Previewing those 3 games, regardless of team, always previewing those 3 games every week. Plus, in terms of a 4th game to fully preview, I'm going to lean into my team affiliation. I'm a Packers fan. We're going to be talking about the Packers game every single week. So, for fans of the NFC North, I'm going to go in depth on your teams at least twice this year, if not more, because they're going to be potentially playing in prime time, but they're going to play the Packers twice. So that's what we're going to do. Every single week, we're going to be paying extra attention to Thursday night football, Sunday night football, Monday night football, and whoever the Packers are playing. For when the Packers are on bye, there will be a vote. Or if the Packers are in one of those marquee games, follow me on Twitter at @blockbuster_guy. It's not X, it's still Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, and there will be a poll. Whatever game wins that poll is the game that we will focus on that week in lieu of either the Packers not playing or the Packers being in one of those marquee games. Week 1. Here we go. Time for the picks. Thursday night football. Kicking off with the Detroit Lions in Kansas City, taking on the Chiefs. And like we mentioned, Big news today, Travis Kelce hyperextending his knee. We don't exactly know what the severity of it is right now. They think the team said they were going to retest it on Wednesday. I'm assuming Wednesday's probably just a walkthrough, but they're going to retest it again tomorrow and see. But boy, you hyperextend a knee. Look, I've had knee injuries in the past that were bad. You hyperextend the knee on Tuesday and then try to turn around and play a game on Thursday, feels like it's not going to go well for you. On Detroit's sideline, look, I said it from right from the top. Motor City Dan Campbell did some incredible things with that team last year. Really had the offense kicking, and I think I think I'm a little concerned though. When you look at that receiving core, like Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be an absolute stud. Absolute stud. But coming into this game, it looks like the guys on the outside are going to be Marvin Jones and Josh Reynolds with Amon-Ra in the slot. Now, I love Amon-Ra in the slot. I think that creates all kinds of weird, crazy mismatches. But those outside receivers don't strike me as guys that are going to win a ton of matchups against top corners. Now, do the Chiefs have top corners? I think their corners are good. Are they great? Probably not. We're talking about two offenses that have a ton of expectations coming into this year. With Kansas City, obviously it's well earned. Any Patrick Mahomes offense, the expectation is they're going to be a top 5 offense. Detroit, based on what they did last year, Jared Goff had a great season. They draft Jahmyr Gibbs, which is obviously a big deal. He probably looks like he's going to kind of take the reins as the top guy there in Detroit, probably spelled by David Montgomery. I think that offense is still going to be good. Am I fully convinced that offense is going to be as good or better than they were last year? Not necessarily. I think Detroit is in, even though they're in that tier, I put them in that tier of very firm playoff contenders. I kind of have to see it. I got to see it with them for the first couple of weeks to say, like, okay, they're as good as they were last year. With Kansas City, I don't really have to see it, although it's going to be interesting without Travis Kelce. And I hope if you're a fantasy football player, I hope you weren't running to the waiver wire to grab whoever their backup tight end was. Last time Kelce didn't play a game and their current backup tight end got the start was like week 16 of 2021. He had 2 catches for 12 yards. So, like, just don't worry about them at tight end. You might want to try to grab one of the receivers that didn't get drafted. In any case, I have faith in the Chiefs offensively. I don't necessarily have the same faith in the Lions right from the jump. I kind of need to see it. I'm going to go with the Chiefs in this game straight up. Again, the game is in Arrowhead. So let's go ahead and grab the Kansas City Chiefs at home to get the win over Detroit. Now, against the spread, this when I first looked at it, it was I looked at it first at -6.5. Now, obviously, with the news about Travis Kelce, we're looking at a number that dropped all the way down to -5. So Kansas City now laying only -5 as a home favorite with a total of 53, which did drop a point from 54 based on this news. I think anytime you get Patrick Mahomes at home under a touchdown, I think you got to lay those points. So I'm going to go ahead and take the -5 on Kansas City in this one. Total of 53. I think we're going to go ahead and just not think about it too much. I think these are two defenses that give up their fair share of points. So let's grab over 53 points in Kansas City, Detroit. Let's go Chiefs 31, Lions 24. Super entertaining game on Thursday Night Football. Chiefs win, Chiefs cover, and give me the over on the points. So We just had Gorian in the chat ask a very important question. So you will not do all games like last season. That's not correct. I will be doing picks for every single game. However, I will not be giving the same 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minute treatment to every single game. I'm going a lot more on my gut and a lot more just about my instinct of how I feel about teams and matchups rather than doing the full 4 to 5 minute preview for each game, just in the interest of trying to speed things up. This week's episode is going to be longer because we had the preamble, we had the, talking about the last year and coming into this year. So this week's episode is going to be longer. Next week, you're going to see it shorter. I'm committed next week that this stream is going to be shorter than like an hour and 10 with that, 5 minutes at the beginning and then the full preview. So it's definitely going to be shorter. Let's now rapid fire through a couple of games before we take a look at the Packers game, which I believe is being played in the early window this week. Panthers at Falcons. Carolina in Atlanta taking on the Falcons. Division matchup here. Bijan Robinson versus Bryce Young. An incredible matchup of rookies who obviously have some very, very high expectations for their careers. Maybe not necessarily for this year. Although for Bijan, I mean, people are immediately going like, well, Bijan's going to be the offensive rookie of the year. Jahmyr Gibbs is like, hey, I'm kind of over here as well. And those wide receivers. So I feel like there's a lot of competition for offensive rookie of the year. I expect Bijan's going to have a really good season. And I think fundamentally, even though I have these two teams in the same tier, I do believe Atlanta is better at what they do best, which I believe is running the football. Give me the Atlanta Falcons at home. Let's get the win here for Atlanta. Division matchup against Carolina. Again, I think both of these teams are going to be relatively good. Give me Atlanta to get the win at home. Now, against the spread, Atlanta laying -3.5 with a total of 39.5, which has dropped by I think 3 points from where I got the number originally. I'm going to lay those 3.5 on Atlanta. You're buying the extra half point on what's going to be a fairly close matchup, I believe. But I'm going to go ahead and lay those points on the Falcons. I think they surprise. The 39.5, any number that begins with a 3, you almost have to take the over on it. I understand that the under really hits in week ones historically, especially over the last 5 or 6 years. The under is really, really strong, but 39.5 is so beatable. Give me the over on this one. Let's go 24-17 Atlanta. Falcons win, Falcons cover, and give me the over on the points. Cincinnati in Cleveland. The Bengals taking on the Browns. The Browns coming into this game as 2.5-point dogs at home with a total of 47.5 coming into this game. The Browns are one of those teams that I feel like their range of outcomes this year is massive. Like they could be a playoff team. They could win a playoff game. They could miss the playoffs. They could have a top 5 pick. I just feel like the Browns are all over the place. The one real reliable, I believe, on that team is Nick Chubb, because I feel like Nick Chubb is like the modern day Marshawn Lynch almost. I just think Nick Chubb is that unstoppable bruising force that I think will be a leveler for the Browns on the offensive side. The Cincinnati Bengals have been an elite team in this league for a number of years now. Joe Burrow is getting a lot of buzz this year as a potential MVP. Could this be his MVP season? He's got incredible wide receivers. I think that offensive line is going to get a little bit better. I think the defense is going to be fine. Their pass rush tends to be very good. I'm going to grab the Bengals here. I feel like the Bengals are top to bottom the better football team, with the exception of the starting running back. I think you got to give that to Nick Chubb. Other than that, I think everywhere the Bengals are the better team. So give me Cincinnati on the road in Cleveland to get the win over the Browns. 2.5, it's less than 3. It's a small price to pay. I like the Bengals to win. So let's go ahead and lay the -2.5 on Cincinnati on the road in Cleveland. This is like a perfect number on the total 47 and a half. Even though the spread on this has moved, the total has not. It stayed right there at 47 and a half, unflinching. So I'm not going to flinch either. I think this game just barely stays under, but I think we get half pointed on this either way. I think the final score is 28-20 or 27-20. We're going to get half pointed to the under or half pointed to the over. That's where I think it's going to land. Let's go 27-20 and get half pointed to the under 47 and a half. Jacksonville in Indianapolis. Trevor Lawrence taking on Anthony Richardson, who was named the Colts starting quarterback. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is on the PUP list. He's going to miss the first 4 games and may not play for the Colts this year at all. They may orchestrate a trade in the interim there before he ever actually plays a snap for the Colts this year. Man, other than Michael Pittman, who I think is going to be really good for them, and Alec Pierce, who I think has like a low-key shot at being like a viable wide receiver 3 or 4. I think he's a nice little snag in Dynasty. But boy, it's just bad. It's just bad for the Colts right now. There's not a lot of reason for optimism other than if Anthony Richardson absolutely blows the roof off. And that's within the range of outcomes for this year. Anthony Richardson could have a monster first season. Does it result in the Colts making the playoffs? I don't think so. But in that division, it kind of feels like anything can happen. In any case, look, Jacksonville has all the offensive weapons here. All the edge goes straight to the Jacksonville Jaguars side of the football. So we're going to be on the Jags in this one for sure. Jacksonville on the road gets the win in Indianapolis. Now, on the line, Indy is taking 5 points here as a home dog. Home dogs are popular plays, certainly early on in the season. I got to see it from Indianapolis before I'm willing to ride with it. So let's lay the -5 here on Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, less than a touchdown. Yeah, it's on the road, and yeah, it's in the division. But let's lay those points and see what happens. Total in the game set at 45. I think this is also a relatively good number. I think this falls somewhere within a couple of points, a field goal either way of this number. I'm going to stick under on it because I don't know what the upside of this Colts offense is right now. So let's stick with the under here. Under 45 points in Jacksonville, Indianapolis. Let's go 23-16 Jags. Jags win. Jags cover. And give me the under on the points. And let's go to Minnesota. The Minnesota Vikings at home taking on the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, look, this is a matchup of 2 teams that I obviously don't have crazy super high expectations for. Vegas is really, really laying the points here on the Minnesota Vikings, like -6.5. The Vikes come into this game as nearly full touchdown favorites, and that goes to show just how little faith there is right now in the Bucks. Certainly I think on both sides of the football, but that offense, like I don't think Baker Mayfield's a bad quarterback. But if Mike Evans wants out, and there's going to be a Mike Evans trade, which, by the way, personal message to Brian Gutekunst in the front office of the Green Bay Packers. I am here humbly requesting that you trade for Mike Evans if he is available. If you want to trade Romeo Doubs, I'd be okay with that. Anyway, let's go back. That's a sidebar. There's not a lot of expectation for Tampa Bay. I think Rachaad White's going to be really good this year. I really do. But does that make a winner? I don't think so. And if you get one of your best receiving options out of there, it's going to hurt it even more. So I'm definitely going with the Vikings to win this game because if you remember week 1 of last year, Justin Jefferson went off. And so my expectation is that this week, Justin Jefferson's going to go off. It may be just based on that. I guess I got to hold my nose and lay the points. So let's take Minnesota to win. Let's lay the -6.5 here with the Vikes. Total in the game set at 45.5. It's through my deep, deep mistrust in the Vikings defense that I'm saying take the over in this one. I think they're going to make the Bucks offense look better than the Bucks offense actually is. So let's go over 45 and a half points just because it's a middling 40. It's a beatable number. Let's go 34-26 in favor of the Vikings. Vikings win. Vikings cover the -6.5 and give me the over on the point total. So that's how we're going to kind of do things. We preview one game a little more in depth, and then we go boom, 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 boom. In depth, boom, 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 boom. That's the way we're going to do things this year. So I hope that format works. We shall see as we get deeper into the season if it holds water, but that's what I'm feeling right now. Feel free to give me any feedback on how we're doing in the chat or in the comments down below if you're watching on the VOD. Now we're going to take the time to preview the Packers game. The Packers are on the road in Chicago, beginning the season division matchup against Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. Something of a new look Chicago Bears. David Montgomery's not there anymore. They brought in DJ Moore as the, firm number one receiver. And I think the upside of the Bears offense is better. I really like Khalil Herbert. I think Khalil Herbert is a very solid running back in this league. And I believe they just drafted somebody. Was it Roshan? I lost his last name. Somebody in the chat's going to be able to give me this. It's Roshan something. But I think the upside of the Bears offense is there if Justin Fields even matches what he did last year, if not takes a step forward. I think there's a lot of room in his game as a passer for him to take a step forward. He's never going to be Mahomes, but the combination of his ability to run the ball and taking a step forward as a passing quarterback, I think that is definitely there. And if that happens, I think the Bears are going to be much better off for it. Green Bay, look, it is game one of the Jordan Love era. I actually feel really good about Jordan Love. I really do. If you'll recall, I was the insane one doing those, 2020 mock NFL drafts, saying the Packers are going to trade up and draft Jordan Love. And then the Packers traded up and drafted Jordan Love. Barry Horowitzing myself on that one, patting myself on the back because I called that. I called that easy money. That's what they're going to do. And nobody liked it. Everybody was mad, justifiably so. Did it contribute to Aaron Rodgers leaving? I'm sure it did. But we got to the point, I feel anyway, in the Packers fan base where we just wanted the Aaron Rodgers stuff to end. Like it was such a distraction. And it was just such does this have to be a talking point? Do we have to, in a weird way, acquiesce to this dude talking about ayahuasca and showing his feet? Why are we still doing this? And I love Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is one of my favorite players of all time. But what are we doing here? I'm excited to start the Jordan Love era. I really am. And I think he's got a solid receiving core, very young receiving core. But I think the upside on this core is really good. Christian Watson has an upside to be an exceptionally good wide receiver in this league. I like Romeo Doubs. But if Romeo Doubs kind of has to be the guy on the cutting room floor to bring in a guy like Mike Evans, again, I would be okay with that as a Packers fan. And I really like Jaden Reed, who they just drafted. I think Jaden Reed could potentially be the other guy on the outside, maybe with Doubs in the slot. Maybe they put Christian Watson in the slot, but I don't think so. But I really like his upside. So I think this receiving core and bringing in Luke Musgrave at tight end, I think the weapons are going to be there for Jordan Love. It's going to take some time for them to develop, but I'm actually feeling pretty good. And most of the Packers' best weapons on defense are still there. Yes, they did lose Adrian Amos. They have lost some players there, but they've also brought in replacement level players that I think are very good, like guys through the draft who I think have upside, certainly on the defensive side of the ball. I think their defense is going to be about what it was last year, even though they did subtract. So I still feel really good about where the Packers are right now. And it's why I put them in that fringe group. I genuinely think this Packers team could surprise some people. And I think it starts in week one. Look, I like the Bears. I don't love the Bears, clearly, because where did I just put them? I don't love the Packers. I do love the Packers. I don't love the Packers in terms of what I think their results are going to be this year, but I like the Packers in this game, even though it's in Chicago. And even though I think there's a great argument to be made that these teams are on close enough levels that they probably split home and home. And in that sense, I should probably take the home team. I'm going to grab Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. I think that Packers defense is the better of the two defenses, and maybe it's the defenses that wind up winning the day. Let's take the Green Bay Packers on the road in Chicago to get the win over the Bears. Now, this line originally was like 2.5, I believe. I think Chicago was laying -2.5. It's all the way down to -1 now. So this line is moving a lot closer to a pick 'em. I bet you it'll be a pick 'em by Sunday. But I like the Packers to win. Give me the +1 against the spread on Green Bay. Total in the game set at 43. Originally, I think this number was 44.5. So this number is coming down. This could be a 42 by kickoff. I still think it stays under 43. I think this game will struggle to get to 40 points. I think that both defenses will come to play. And again, offenses that need some time to gel. Let's take under 43 points in Chicago, Green Bay. Let's go 24-16 in favor of the Packers. Packers win, Packers cover the +1, and give me the under on the points. Kat just made a great point here in the chat. This feels like a game where we feel Green Bay is still better than Chicago, but then afterwards, the Bears go on a win streak and the Packers go on a losing streak. That could so easily happen. It's not even funny how easy that could happen, that you may have literally just nailed it. Like that, don't have to put too much thought into the rest of those picks for the next 5 or 6 weeks. Go with your gut, and you may very well be right. All right, now we will rapid fire through a couple more here. The Tennessee Titans in New Orleans to take on the Saints. I just said it a little earlier. You know how I feel about the Saints. I'm not very high on them as a team. I'm not super high on Tennessee either. I think we're going to start seeing like the downgrading of Derrick Henry. Yes, Derrick Henry is a monster. Yes, he's one of the great running backs of the last 5 to 10 years. Not going to take anything like that away from him, but this offensive line for Tennessee got measurably worse in the offseason. Their whole offense, I believe, as a result, will get measurably worse this season. So Derrick Henry backers, especially in fantasy, I think you might be in for a bit of a rude awakening this season, but I still think it's good enough for the Tennessee Titans to go into New Orleans, get the win over the Saints. Let's take Tennessee to win straight up. Now, New Orleans favored by 3.5 points in this game. I think the wrong team is the favorite here, obviously. I'm more than happy to take that +3.5 on the Tennessee Titans. Total in the game here set at 41.5. It's such a beatable number. I do think it just crawls over, maybe on the last second field goal that wins the game. So let's go 23-21 in favor of the Tennessee Titans. Titans win, Titans cover, and give me the over just barely on that 41.5 point total. San Francisco in Pittsburgh. This is going to be one of the most interesting, and it's already one of the most interesting conversations of week one in the NFL, because my God, there's a lot of people taking Pittsburgh +2.5 against the spread. That almost sounds like you're taking Pittsburgh to win the game outright. Like, I understand that the Bosa contract situation looms large here. And I understand that Brock Purdy is coming back from an injury, and there's some uncertainty there in the quarterback position. However, they were apparently certain enough at quarterback to trade away Trey Lance. So whether it's Purdy or whether it's Sam Darnold, who is apparently the second best quarterback in that room somehow. I don't know who's measuring these things, but in any case, regardless of who it is at quarterback, top to bottom, the Niners just have a better roster. And if everybody's healthy or mostly healthy, I don't get it. I don't understand why this number is as low as it is. I like the Niners to win this game outright. I'm fairly confident in that. And to get them at -2.5, I got no problem with that at all. So let's go ahead and take the Niners to win that game outright and lay the -2.5 on San Francisco. I like them to win. It's a small price to pay. Let's go for it. Total in the game set at 40.5. I think this game gets into the 30s, but I don't see it getting into the 40s. So I'm comfortable taking an under here. Under 40.5 in San Francisco, Pittsburgh. Let's go 21-13 in favor of the Niners. So Niners win, Niners cover, and give me the under on the points. Arizona at Washington. And this is where a format like this is really going to help me out because there's not a lot to talk about in this game. Arizona has basically James Conner, and that's about it. Washington, like I said, I think their offense takes a step forward. That connection of Sam Howell to Jahan Dotson, I think, is going to be one of low key the best connections in the NFL this year. I'm expecting big things out of Jahan Dotson. I think Washington rolls in this game. Let's take the Commanders at home to get their first win in the post Dan Snyder era. Washington gets the win over Arizona. Washington's laying a full touchdown in this game, -7. I kind of have to do this a little bit, but I'm going to lay those points. Washington -7. It's a lot of points to lay, but what's the upside of the Arizona Cardinals right now? What is it? I can't imagine what it is. Total in this game set at 38 points. I'm still going to take the under here because Washington doesn't have to blow them out. I think their defense could wind up being dominant in this game, but let's go under 38 points in Washington, Arizona. Let's go 20-6. Washington wins, Washington covers. Give me the under on the points. And the Houston Texans in Baltimore to take on the Ravens. CJ Stroud and Will Anderson Jr. making their NFL debuts against the Baltimore Ravens. Very high expectations, obviously, for the Ravens this year. And Vegas has high expectations for them too. Laying 9.5 points are the Ravens in this game. Total in the game is 44. I do think Baltimore rolls in this one. I'll be really interested to see how that receiving core looks this year. Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman coming back from injury, and Zay Flowers. 1, 2, 3. Pretty solid. Pretty solid 1, 2, 3 punch there. I think Zay Flowers is going to surprise a lot of people. Could be a nice dark horse for offensive rookie of the year. I'm really looking forward to what this Ravens offense is going to look like. J.K. Dobbins coming back, ideally from injury. Hopefully he's as good or better than he's ever been. I really like Baltimore in this matchup, and it's tough to go into Baltimore and win. So let's go ahead and take the Ravens at home to get the win here over Houston. 9.5 points. It's a lot of points to lay. I think I'm going to have to go ahead and do it because I got to see what this Houston offense now is going to look like with CJ Stroud under center. He's got some receiving options that I like. Nico Collins should have John Mechie soon enough. He's got receiving options that I like, but I don't know, 9.5 points. It's so much. Some books already have this at 10, and double digits in week 1 tend to not do very well. But I'm going to go ahead and lay the -9.5 here on Baltimore. Total in the game set at 44. Fairly good number, but somehow I just don't think this game gets in the 40s. So if it doesn't, you got to take the under on it. Under 44 points in Baltimore. Houston, let's go 27-10 in favor of the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens win, Ravens cover, and give me the under. All right, let's see. Let's catch up here in the chat before we talk about the Sunday night football game. Let's see. Derrick Henry, the Barry Sanders in today's game. Interesting comparison. Pittsburgh and San Fran is so close, I think it'll go under. Andrew saying the Kyler Murray situation will hurt Arizona and will be the number one pick in the draft in 24. Oh, that's what you mean by them being the Exorcist this year. Fair enough. Let's see. Gorian says, you sound funny, bro. Saints beat the Titans. More dogs. Fair enough. Cat, I couldn't do it for DC. They should absolutely dominate Arizona, but I don't want to lay 7 to DC yet. That's totally understandable. Totally understandable. I kind of had to do that a little bit. Half Moon talking about a couple of like correlation plays, and you're 100% right in this. This is just, I'm going with gut instinct on some of these. He says picking under 38, you should take the 7 points in a low scoring game. And then also chiming in under 44, take the 10 points. Again, those are more solid. They're more solid picks. They absolutely are. I'm going more with gut, and my gut says what my gut says. But if you really want like fundamentally solid picks, you want to listen to Half Moon. All right. The Dallas Cowboys going to New York to take on the football Giants. So Dak Prescott taking on Daniel Jones. Again, we talked about it. The Dallas Cowboys, one of the most efficient offenses, the most efficient offense, in fact, in football last year. We talked about Zeke being out the door. It's a Tony Pollard team now at the running back position. I think the defense will be solid this year. I think the defenses are going to be solid basically across the board in that division. That's a division of 4 pretty good defenses, even though we did talk about the Eagles being a bottom 10 in terms of efficiency last year. I think that probably turns around this year. But that's a really, really solid division in terms of defenses. The New York Giants bringing in a guy like Darren Waller at tight end, that makes such a huge difference for a young quarterback like Daniel Jones. Finally has that legitimate security blanket, right? If the receiving routes aren't there, he knows he's got a mismatch with most, linebackers, outside linebackers, defensive ends, whoever happens to be covering a guy like Darren Waller. He knows more often than not he's going to have a mismatch there that he's going to be able to exploit. And I think that's going to really help him take that step forward offensively for the whole Giants team. And then, of course, Saquon Barkley. Saquon, I think, is one of the last true bell cows in the NFL. I don't think there's much of anybody behind him that's going to really, really threaten his upside in fantasy or his statistical upside or what have you. I genuinely think this is a very close matchup. I think this is a matchup that legitimately ends on a last-second field goal. That's how close I think these two teams are and how tight I think this division is going to be able. I just think that's going to be what this division is going to be. So since that's the case, the number's 3.5 for Dallas, the road team. So take the 3.5 on the Giants. The Giants were a killer team last year against the spread as dogs. Like, they were massive. I think they won like 11 times, not straight up, but like against the spread. I think they beat the spread double-digit times last year as a betting underdog. I didn't do that specific research. We should go back and take a look. But they were monsters last year as dogs. So I think you take those 3.5 points. And if I'm going to take those 3.5, it's not a good hedge. I think I got to take the Giants to win this game outright. They start the season at home. Home crowd's going to be hot. They feel like this team's going to be better than it was last year. They feel like this team might contend for a playoff spot this year, which I agree with. I'm going to take them to get a massive, major upset win in week 1. Giants beat the Dallas Cowboys in New York in week 1. Daniel Jones leads his team to a victory over a division opponent, assumed to be one of the best teams in the league. I even said they were, and I believe that. But the Giants in week 1 get a division win. So obviously, like I said, Half Moon in the chat, quick check for a gas leak. Come on now. I've made wilder upset picks than this. Giants win outright. Take the Giants plus 3.5 against the spread. Total in this game is at 46.5 points. I think both of these defenses come to play. So give me the under on this. Under 46.5 points. I don't think the game gets to 40. So Giants win. Giants cover under 46.5 points. 20-17. The New York Giants beat the Dallas Cowboys in week 1. I'm giving a pause for dramatic effect just to let it settle in. I'm crazy. I'm that guy. Had to do it. All right, let's fly through 4 more games here before we get to our final game of the week, the Buffalo Bills in New York to take on the Jets. But we're going to fly through 4 games here. A division matchup is going to actually 2 division matchups in here, but the Las Vegas Raiders in Denver to take on the Broncos. Now, again, I think people think the Broncos are finally going to put it all together. And with Sean Payton now in there at head coach, I think that's why the expectations are, kind of flying high. But like we saw this movie last year, the expectations were flying high when Russell Wilson came in. What happened? They started the season 4-11, I think. They fired Nathaniel Hackett, which I agree, Nathaniel Hackett was not the right choice. That was entirely a play to get Aaron Rodgers, and it didn't work. And he was not the choice. They have a better coach in there now. So will their results get better? I think there's a good chance that they might. Does it necessarily mean that they should be, more than a field goal favorite against a division opponent in week 1? Not necessarily. Again, I'm not super high on the Raiders. They've had guys go out the door. Darren Waller is the big one. We talk about Devontae Adams as a guy that may not be there for the whole season. He hasn't officially requested a trade or anything. I don't mean to decry the guy like that, but he ain't happy. He went to Vegas. He wanted to be in Vegas, but he went to Vegas. He went to the Raiders specifically because of Derek Carr, who is now in New Orleans. So what's tying him there anymore? You got to wonder if he's got some remorse about that move. In any case, I don't necessarily think the Broncos should be favored by as much as they are. They're favored by -3.5 right now. Total in the game's 43.5. I can't buy that extra half point on the Broncos without seeing them first. And if I'm not, again, just like the last game, if I'm not going to buy the extra half point, like take the +3.5 here on the Raiders, and you might as well take the Raiders to win the game outright. I think you got to see what's going to happen with this Broncos team before you can kind of bet with them with confidence. And again, not that I'm super confident in the Raiders, but I'm going to take that +3.5, and I'm going to take the Raiders to win this division game outright. The rule of 4 is a thing. Dogs are going to bark. Let's take the Raiders on the road in Denver to get the win over the Broncos. So again, Raiders straight up. Raiders +3.5 against the spread. Total in the game 43.5. I think I'm going to go over on this one. Relatively good number, but the Raiders defense is not the greatest. And if I think they're going to win the game, score at least 1 point more than the opponent, I think this winds up going over. So let's go over 43.5 points. Let's go 24-23 Raiders. Win by the slightest of margins. Raiders get the win. The Philadelphia Eagles in New England to take on the Patriots. This game a lot closer than I would have expected against the spread. The Patriots are taking only +4 here as a home dog. I expected this number to be closer to a touchdown. So 4 points. If you're an Eagles backer, you got to feel pretty good about that with that offense, with all those pieces. Again, a defense that I think is better than their efficiency would have had you believe from last year, but the efficiency was still what it was, bottom 10 in the league. But I still feel pretty good about this Eagles team this year. Again, I think one of the 6 elite teams in the NFL in 2023. That's going to be good enough to get them past a Patriots team here in week 1 that I really don't know what they're going to look like. So let's grab the Eagles here on the road in New England to beat the Patriots. However, what I am going to do, hang on. For the rule of 4 quota, I don't hate the Raiders here at all. I took Denver because I really have no faith in Vegas, but I don't hate the Raiders here at all. Yeah, it's true. This is one of those ones that, like, I was looking at the spread here of home spreads that I had taken, realizing that there weren't all that many. So I'm sitting here thinking, I'm going to take the Eagles to win, but do I take those 4 points on New England? It feels like a really bad play. So I'm actually going to, we're calling an audible here live, doing it live. I'm going to have to lay those 4 points, I think. It's too slim of a margin. It's not a good hedge. If this was like 5, 5.5, 6, something like that, I might think more about, hedging my bets and taking the points, but let's lay the -4 there on Philly. Total in the game, 45.5 points. I think this game gets to 50 easily. This 45.5 feels like a gift. So we're going to go ahead and take the over on the 45.5 points. Let's take the Philadelphia Eagles 31, the New England Patriots 23. So Eagles win, Eagles cover, and give me the over on the points. Now, that aforementioned Miami Dolphins Los Angeles Chargers game that I mentioned earlier, that because I have both of these teams in the same tier and it's the second tier, it makes this matchup very interesting jumping into week 1. I love the receivers on both sides of this matchup. Jalen Waddell and Tyreek Hill on this side, and on the Chargers side, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, who they just drafted. I love this quarterback matchup. People are not putting enough respect, I don't think, on Tua's name. If you feel like Jalen Waddell is going to be a top 10 receiver this year, which I'm hearing a ton of, and you feel like Tyreek Hill is going to be a top 10 receiver, which I'm hearing a lot of, if both of those things are true, how can you feel that Tua is not going to be a top 8 quarterback? If he's going to have 2 top 10 receivers, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. So I don't think enough respect by osmosis maybe is being put on Tua Tagovailoa's name. Tua versus Justin Herbert is a quarterback matchup I absolutely love. It is a matchup of the 2 quarterbacks that I own in the Ante and Co. Dynasty League. Like, those are my 2 quarterbacks, Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa. I absolutely love my quarterback situation for years to come in that league. I just don't trust those Chargers. I've been burned. I've been burned too much in the past. I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins on the road in Los Angeles to beat the Chargers as 2.5-point dogs. Another rule of 4 pick right here. The Miami Dolphins beat the LA Chargers in LA in week 1. I think that offense soars from Miami. I think the defense improves a little bit from last year, and I think they get the job done late in that football game. Miami beats the Chargers. On the line, obviously, I like Miami to win, so give me the +2.5 on the Dolphins against the spread. Total in the game, 50.5 points. I think this game gets into the 50s, so give me the over on this one. 28-24 in favor of the Dolphins. Win, cover, give me the over. and the Rams in Seattle to take on the Seahawks, battle of the NFC West. Look, I have no faith in the Rams this year whatsoever. The only piece of that Rams team that I have faith in, and this is going to be such a weird call, the only one that I have faith in is Cam Akers. I don't have faith that Cooper Kupp's hamstring injury isn't going to be a pervasive thing for him all year long. I think they're going to do everything that they can to manage his reps. He might not play 8 games this year based on that, or 8 full games this year. I actually really like Cam Akers' upside. I think Cam Akers could be like a bona fide top 20 running back this year, maybe top 15, which is a really good season, and definitely a far cry from some of the struggles that he went through with that team last year. He's the only piece of that Rams offense that I like. He's the only piece of that Rams offense that I like, quarterback included. Give me the Seattle Seahawks in this one. I think the Seahawks mostly roll in this one. I don't think they're going to put up too much of a fight, are the Rams. So give me the Seahawks to win this game outright at home over the Rams. Seahawks are laying -5 against the spread here as a home favorite. I'm going to lay the -5 as well. It's under a touchdown. I think their offense in Seattle deserves that. The receiving core is looking really, really good. Once JSN is up to full health, that's a really good 1-2-3. DK, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. That's a really good 1-2-3. They got a really good 1-2 at running back now. Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. They have got playmakers all over that offense. And again, if Geno Smith has the opportunity and can even repeat what he did last year, Seattle's going to be in fine shape. So Seahawks win. I'm going to lay the -5 on the Seattle Seahawks. Total in the game set at 46. I think I have to stay under on this total because while I think that offense is going to be good, I think Seattle's defense is also going to be good. And I don't know what we're going to get week 1 from the Rams on the offensive side. So give me the under on the 46-point total. Let's go 24-10 in favor of the Seahawks. Win, cover, under on the points. All right, let's look at what we've got here in the chat before we preview our final game. Let's see. Cat, I know they sell, but can Dallas stop being in primetime in a primetime game for week 1? Let them have week 2 and 3, but at least week 1, give me someone newer and fresher team. Fair enough. I think both Sunday and Monday Night Football games will decide the fate for all 4 teams this year. Who gets the division and who will be the wild card out of the playoffs? Interesting. Then there's Half Moon making fun of me for picking the Giants. Cat, I'm not touching Vegas and Denver on any parlay I do. I don't think you should. I don't think either of those teams have earned that, to be honest. Josh McDaniels needs to be fired from the Raiders and go back to Hoodie. That's possible. Half Moon, Russell Wilson looks old. You know what? Last year, he did. He absolutely did. I think you're 100% right. Let's see. If my Patriots, this is Andrew, can get the offense and the O-line going, they could surprise a lot of teams, but not against Philly. Fair enough. Eagles at only 4 is free money, to be honest. That was from Cat. Andrew, I think the winner of Miami and Chargers game gets a wild card spot. Interesting. I like that. Half Moon, the lights blew out on that Seahawks pick. I don't know what to think about that. And Andrew, I think Geno Smith could be an interesting story this year if he takes him to the playoffs. I think there's a good possibility that happens. The final game to look at